Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for joining us today, for taking the time out. I know it's been a terribly busy day for you. I wanted to ask you a few questions on especially this one topic that your ministry has been such an integral part of, the SDGs. Largely, there's been a consensus in the world that, COVID pandemic has had a lot of setbacks. And it is the same situation for us. I wanted to understand from you, what is the situation of the SDGs when it comes to India, gender equality and children-related goals? How do we look at this whole issue from the India perspective?
I think that one needs to recognize that as a nation, are we conforming to the needs, the rights of our individual citizens and performing to the best of our abilities through governance and administrative structures only so that we can live up to our SDG commitments? Or are we doing so because we prioritize domestically the needs of our citizens? One needs to be very, very, I think, succinct in that discrimination, if I may use that word. Because to presume that a nation state like India will work for the cause of women and children only because we have to fulfill an international commitment with regards to SDG belittles the efforts of a government elected democratically by people and consistently belittles the very systemic democracy that we have in place. That being said, how does a government prioritize the needs of women and children, especially when there is a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic like COVID? One needs to recognize that internationally, one of the biggest buzzes around a country like India was that what of the millions of people in a billion-plus population that may not be able to afford food? And when the Prime Minister prioritized the food security needs of the country, nobody in the Indian polity, let alone administration, ever imagined that 80 crore people could get at their doorstep consistent delivery of food grains for 25 months at a stretch. This delivery mechanism, one is a resolve of a government. But if you look at global economies, no country in the world has managed to fulfill this very basic needs of its individual citizens. Apart from that, when you look at the additional nutritional needs of pregnant women, lactating mothers, and children below the age of 6, that need was met in a collaborative fashion, above and beyond the 80 crore ration needs fulfilled for 25 months under the Ministry of Food and Civil Supplies. So there was an additional support specifically given for pregnant women, for lactating mothers and children below the age of 6. And additionally, may I speak for education, for also children who are receiving the benefits of midday meals. And that arrangement also sustained through a global lockdown. Now, this was a mammoth task. Secondly, when a pandemic strikes, one of the greatest challenges is, what about the hospitalization needs of those who are not engulfed in the pandemic or not in, for the lack of a better terminology, not COVID positive? So you had a system that serviced the needs of COVID positive patients, at the same time serviced the needs of non-COVID patients, which includes women and children. Did the vaccination drive under Mission Indradhanush take a back seat? Not at all. Were the needs of pregnant women who wanted institutional deliveries, did they take a back seat? Not at all. Additionally, we saw the government, apart from ensuring that infrastructurally the medical needs of women and children were addressed, you had the burden of the cost of the COVID vaccine. Now, if you look at the private market, the vaccine costs nothing less than 500, 600 rupees. 2 doses means 1200 rupees, to say the least. Now, when you are giving 80 crore citizens free food grains, That is 80 crore citizens in need of free vaccine. The maths is mammoth.
Yes.
And 50% of those in need are women. Additionally, are children who receive the vaccine. So this is a government that gave enough impetus to the needs administratively, medically, nutritionally, and prioritize those of women and children. Now, apart from nutrition, vaccination, and medical needs, none of the emergency services in our country shut down. Your women's helpline was working 24/7, centrally and per state. Your women's commission were working. Your children's commission were working. Your children's helpline was working. Your fast track judicial systems so that those who are victims of crime were working.
Yeah.
Your counseling, courtesy, NIMHANS and projects like Samvad in Ministry of Women and Child Development were working. Your counseling needs through NIMHANS courtesy Ministry of Health were working. Apart from that, post-pandemic, I am not taking into consideration the booster shots that were given, administered to adults and children. Like, you had efforts like the PM CARES Yojana, where those who were completely orphaned, they were given support for their educational needs, not today, not tomorrow, but till such time they attained adulthood, till such time that they completed the higher education. So when you look at these issues now, comprehensively you recognize, it was not the SDG goals aspiration that was driving India. It was the Prime Minister's commitment that my citizens deserve the best. My citizens deserve the first service. That diplomatically, we could also pull off vaccine Maitri as an additional feather in the cap.
Absolutely. Smriti, so I completely understand that pandemic has had a tremendous impact on a lot of things. But when it comes to the UN's HDI, Human Development Indices, I know we have made great strides when it comes to maternal mortality and, of course, malnourishment. Both NFHS data say that. But, we still have slipped places. I know it is in line with the global trend of a fall. So do you see this data as an indicator of the kind of social progress that we've made?
Firstly, I think one size fits all nomenclatures cannot work in diverse global situations. For instance, if you look at the gender index, how does it peg India? When it comes to political empowerment, the world over, they look at women in legislatures, in the state, or they look at women in parliament, in service. In India, we have close to 1.4 million women serving in Gram Panchayats. For the international index, they're never taken into consideration. If you look at women in positions of administrative service, for instance, Anganwadi workers, or Asha workers, or the women who are a part of the Pani Samiti, or the Rani Mistris, or women who are serving in districts as district magistrates, as CDPOs, as CDOs, they are never considered empowered enough to be registered as contributors in the Global Gender Index. And Vasudha, if you compute purely on the basis of pronounced positions administratively that are now recognized for women by Government of India, those positions itself give you a large quantity of women leading administratively. Actually, when we last computed it, it was close to 1.5 crore plus women.
Wow.
Now, imagine if all these women found a consideration in the Global Gender Index. What would India's numbers be only in that one category?
Smriti, you've also been working from a very young age, I know this. And so this is one question I wanted to ask you. There's one thing that a lot of us keep talking about is, where are the women in the workforce and why is it declining? So, and experts keep saying that, maybe the Indian government needs to incentivize companies to train women, help in their skills acquisition. What do you think is the problem when it comes to women in the workforce?
Maybe people who say this missed the labor codes which ensure equal pay for equal work. Now, honestly, all those who are listening to us belong to some corporate structure or the other. How many of them can honestly say that they're implementing the labor code in its entirety? How many of these companies are actually giving 26 weeks of maternity leave to their female workforce? How many companies which are currently functional, let's say in infrastructure or in housing, how many of them consider those nameless and countless women who work as labor on their construction sites? Aren't such companies aware that the government through the Provident Fund does give support? I mean, I had the privilege of serving in the textile industry. The government gave ample opportunity for the textile industry to measure up for every rupee spent so that more and more women would be formalized. The government's job is to proffer a legislative framework. It is the industry's job to ensure that it is adhered to.
Okay. So
how many corporates today have an internal complaints committee? And I'm not talking only about the big ticket corporates. Those who formulate part of trade associations, how many of their factory settings have creches?
Right. That is true. Yeah. So you're saying that companies also need to provide that kind of support system to women, right?
It is the government's job to provide for fiscal benefits. The government has done so.
Right.
It is the government's job to provide a legislative framework which is simplified. The new labor code provides so. It is now the time for corporate India to walk the talk, especially when they talk in a very exemplary fashion about female emancipation. What stops corporates now from having more and more decisive women in the boardroom? What stops companies now from having more and more women in positions of financial privilege? If you look at reports from the fiscal market, for example, if you look at the McKinsey report, how many VCs are currently supporting more women-driven startups as compared to men-driven startups? We all know where the penny drops and why it drops and when it drops.
Absolutely, yeah. So coming to one of your flagship programs, I know this is a battle for you. You've been fighting undernourishment in the country for a long time. So tell us what I wanted to know about Poshan Abhiyan. I know that you've been working with ministries and with state governments to bridge dietary gaps. You came up with this whole idea of nutrition gardens. You talk to experts, local requirements. I wanted to know, do we finally have enough data, to formulate better policies to provide nutrition for a woman at different phases of her life? And what are the outcomes of such a massive campaign been like?
First, we need to get the structure of the scheme right. The Poshan Abhiyan seeks to serve pregnant, lactating women and children below the age of 6. There is an additional scope created in the last budget for adolescent girls between the ages of 14 to 18 in aspirational districts and in the Northeast. Now, if you look at how nutrition systems have worked in our country, the ICDS program has been in existence since the 1970s. But it is when the Modi government started the Poshan Abhiyan, that is when the first ever growth monitoring devices were assigned to each Anganwadi in our country. Now imagine you running a nutrition program for over 4 to 5 decades, but never having a mechanism to measure growth. Now, second, if you look at the budget allocation, there was never a separate budget vertical to make a toilet or give drinking water facilities in an Anganwadi.
Right.
That came into existence in 2017. Now, when you talk about technology and its use, it's essential to have a mechanism for deployment. It is Poshan Abhiyan under the Prime Minister's direction that ensured that every Anganwadi now is equipped with a smart device. Now, once that device percolates to Anganwadis, Out of 14 lakh Anganwadis, now close to 12 lakh Anganwadis have the growth monitoring devices and the smart devices. You then have to come up with a framework of technology, which gives real-time data of every Anganwadi beneficiary. And Vasudha, earlier Anganwadi workers and Anganwadi systems used to carry thick ledgers. And the beauty of those ledgers was, once you fill that name in, that name would stay there till eternity. Not taking into consideration that a woman can only be pregnant for 9 months.
Yeah.
Not taking into consideration that a woman would lactate only for a specific time period.
Right.
Not taking into consideration that the child that needs to be serviced under the nutrition program needs to be out of the system beyond the age of 6. So it is the same ledger that kept getting rotated. And policy analysts used to rue the fact that so much money is going in. How come there is absolutely no response? So now you have 14 lakh Anganwadis live on a technology platform called Poshan Tracker. 80% of the 10 crore beneficiaries now are Aadhaar linked. And we are pushing states to ensure that we have 100% completion. If a child does not have an Aadhaar number, you cannot get an Aadhaar number. Either of the parents' Aadhaar number will do. Now, with that, what are we saying? We took out a directive 2 years ago, in 2021 to be precise, actually, in January, which says that if you have to deliver food, and especially if it is food that is to be delivered to the doorstep, please make sure it's barcoded. And the tracker actually tracks it. We are currently geotagging every Anganwadi in this country. Also, just like one ration card, one nation, we are now in this financial year saying that if you, let's say, are a migratory labor, you go from Jharkhand, let's say, to Delhi, your card or your number now, especially since it's Aadhaar linked, enables you to get that service in Delhi. And the systems are such that now if a district administration is not operating in Anganwadi, there'll be a red flag at the state level, the national level. If a beneficiary has moved from within a state, within a district, or within the country, every state, the requisite state government and the national government will know about it. So when you talk about, let's say I'm sorry, I'm just elongating my response here. So when you talk about, let's say, the National Family Health Survey, the sample size of the National Family Health Survey is 6 lakhs. I now in the ministry have access as minister to a data set of 11 crore beneficiaries or 10 crore beneficiaries. Their height, their weight is all measured. So if that entire measure is tabulated, you can get real-time data about the health conditions of children below the age of 6 in every state, every district, every Anganwadi, and the state of health of mothers, pregnant or lactating.
Yeah, that's a lot of useful information for you to formulate policies. Yesterday was World Contraception Day, and I know that you'd be the best person to talk about it. I know it's important to, promote awareness about the responsibility of both partners when it comes to family planning approaches. But in India, the burden and the responsibility of family planning or contraception is mostly on women. We see the number of female sterilizations going up. What do you think, what do you suggest is the right approach to even get men involved in this whole process of understanding responsibility when it comes to family planning?
I think that when I look at it from a perspective of nutrition, one needs to recognize that early marriage, and especially marriage which happens before the age of 18, which is not only deemed illegal, also it is a health challenge for the young girl and the baby that is about to come. Close to 25% of girls get married before the age of 18 and the last survey showed that they were already pregnant when they were surveyed. That gigantic number is what adds to the challenge of malnutrition. You put the mother's life in danger, the child's life in danger. And if the progeny is a male child, you assure that that male child is malnourished or susceptible to diabetes, heart conditions, higher blood pressure. All these diseases afflict men if their mothers have been malnourished. So to think that nutrition is a female problem is one of the greatest injustices done to men. Societally, we need to recognize that a man is susceptible to these diseases and illnesses and a heart stroke if the mother was malnourished. One, that. Secondly, I think that the conscious decision by women to choose a contraceptive methodology, given many religious sensibilities, and the rise in numbers that you talk about, Vasudha, for me is a very positive sign that women are exercising their choice.
Yeah.
They're exercising their choice knowing their medical needs, knowing their emotional needs, recognizing their physical needs is a great step forward for the female kind in our country. As far as men goes, I think more and more conversation about such choices. Again, I'm talking about the cultural and religious sensibilities of our country. From a health perspective, will augur well for society at large.
It's very nicely said. Smriti, I was just looking at one of your interviews and you last month, I think, and you happened to say this really nice thing that I agree with. You said social media is also empowering to women, if and there is a modicum of responsibility that needs to be there. We saw what happened in Punjab, this one news of this, leaked video led to protest. And I shudder to think the kind of emotion, assault it must have had on their well. I was wanting to ask you, how do you think women need to sort of protect themselves against online abuse? Also, because when it comes to IPC or the IT Act, the convictions with regard to cybercrime complaints have been very low. So what do you think is the way forward?
Vasudha, allow me to speak not as a minister, but as a woman, and especially to young ladies. I would not particularly talk about only one case, because many women are confronted with many challenges when it comes to cybercrime or crimes of the physical nature. If you look at NCRB data, most women who are raped or assaulted or violated physically, it happens with regards to a person that they've already known. Most of the cases emanate from such close associations or knowing such a person, formally, informally, whatever be the case. Insofar as cybercrime goes, I speak today as a mother of a young girl. No matter what post you put up, no matter what photograph you put up, though there is a law to protect you, instinctively and very realistically, we as women need to recognize that it will be weaponized against us. I speak as not only a mother, but also as an individual who has been at the receiving end of it. And I do so because filing a complaint, following it through judicially is a challenge. And that is what breaks or makes a human being. I speak not only as a mother, not only as an individual who's been at the receiving end of it, but let me give my own example. I'm the cabinet minister, but I filed a case of defamation against a gentleman in 2012. It is 2022. I still haven't got justice. But does that mean that I weaken my belief in the Indian judicial system? No. I carry on, I fight on. I, being cabinet minister one day, was alone in a car, and this case is well known. And 4 men, not knowing that Smriti Irani is in that car, accosted me for quite some time till I caught hold of them. I went to the police station. I filed a case. But I had very well-known journalists then tweeting to me, Jane dijiye. in the national capital. One of them from your own publication. So don't edit this part. Jaane do. So yes, the law is in place. Administrative, judicial systems are in place. But the fight is individual.
Last question. I know the chat would be really incomplete if I don't ask you this, and I have been wanting to ask you this question. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has been, on this massive yatra, Bharat Jodo Yatra, and he's walking miles and he's talking about connecting communities, connecting people, and he is, the whole idea of it is in a way very interesting, because it's after a long time that somebody is walking so many miles. And he's also walking a lot in the southern states. You have fought him, you have won against him. Tell me, what do you think of an exercise like this? Also, because he's spending a lot of time in the south of India, something that your party has also been, this is the place where BJP has also been wanting to expand its footprint. What do you think of this exercise?
Your exclamations about the yatra are as though that the idea is unique to the gentleman walking. Firstly, anybody who knows Indian political history knows this is an idea that is copied. What does that tell you about the gentleman who's walking? That even an idea cannot be original to the family. But more so, I think what Indian polity is right now witnessing is the complete annihilation of the aura of the Gandhi family. Could you ever imagine 8 years ago that leader after leader in the Congress party would be chased by the media, asked, are you interested in becoming the president of the Indian National Congress? And everybody running away. That being the leader and the president of the Indian National Congress is no longer a matter of privilege or pride, but of shame, speaks volumes. So while you're focused on an idea that is copied, I think what is grabbing headlines is an annihilation whose time has come.
So no political impact of this.
Like I said, how do you enamor people if that is the resolve with which the gentleman is walking?
Right.
Do you tell them that I'm a copycat? Or do you tell them, here am I, the original person?
Yeah.
But my focus is not the individual. Because what I defeated in 2019 was the institution. I fought the president of the Indian National Congress, an office that was never defeated in independent India.
Yeah. That is true. Yes, that was one fierce battle. Thank you, Smriti. Thanks a lot. It means a lot to us that you took this time off. Thank you very much. And, I've been tracking your work for years. And there's one thing that I know, apart from the dynamism, you always come up with these great ideas. And that is something that's always been a matter of learning for me, So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Yes, thank you.